Howard woke up from his sleep. He was drenched in sweat and shaking in anxiety. He looked at himself in the mirror. What was going on with him lately? He quickly got out of bed and searched through his closet for a luggage. He emptied out his wardrobe and stuffed his clothes inside the luggage and sat down to book a flight to Nebraska. It was after so many years that Howard was going back to his childhood home in Bellevue, Nebraska. Howard lived there with his family for most of his childhood, until his parents moved to Pennsylvania with them. After Howard became 18, he moved out on his own and rented an apartment in Austin, Texas, and enrolled into college there. Howard would go to Pennsylvania to meet his parents on the holidays every year, but he would never go to Nebraska, and his parents also didn't have any wish to move back to Nebraska and stay in their own home either. The property had been locked since they moved out many years ago, and his parents only went once on a blue moon to check if everything was all right. The reason Howard didn't go, or rather didn't like to go, was because he had a lot of memories about that house from when he was a child. He would always become disturbed when they would come to mind. What bothered him exactly wasn't really the house he grew up in itself. It was the abandoned house next door. Howard could never forget the broken-down house that he used to watch from his backyard for days after days. Those memories still haunted him even after he moved out of Nebraska. Recently, Howard had been waking up to strange dreams. He would see himself at the house in Bellevue, walking around the backyard. Suddenly, something would grab his attention, and he would leap over the fence and enter the abandoned house that was right next door. The dream would always end as soon as he entered the house and shut the door. Howard couldn't understand why he was having these dreams all of a sudden. Could it be a sign? Was there something he overlooked? Was there something he left behind at the abandoned house? A clue? A hint? Howard left on the earliest available flight that night. It was late when he reached there. It took him a while to search for the right pair of keys to this house, back at his apartment. He had forgotten where he had placed them, but eventually he found them in a box at the back of his closet. The house was a little dusty, and all the furniture was covered up. Howard walked around the house and peeped into all of the rooms. All his childhood memories floated in his head. He then came across his sister's room. At once, a wave of guilt filled his mind. It all happened in the summer of 2000. Howard was about 12 years old at the time. He lived with his mother, father, and sister, Haley, in this house. Haley was 2 years younger than him. She was a playful little girl, always teasing Howard for one reason or the other. Howard would always be yelling and scolding Haley, and the two would often get into a sibling catfight. But in the end, Haley always got away because she was younger and was too immature. Yeah, right, Howard thought. It was one afternoon after Howard and Haley had returned home from school. They had gone out to the backyard to play. Howard was chasing after Haley. Haley leaped over the fence and ran into the abandoned house next door. Howard followed after her and went inside the house. The abandoned house smelled damp and gross, and there was garbage scattered in all corners. The wallpapers were peeling off, and the floorboards all creaked. Howard could see Haley hiding around the corner of one of the walls, and he was about to run to catch her. She let out a yelp and started laughing and running the other way. When one of the windows shattered and all the glass fell to the ground, Haley and Howard were scared out of their minds. Howard jumped out the door, and Haley followed after him. But before she could reach the door suddenly shut closed. Howard tried to pull and push from the other side. He could hear his little sister crying from inside, but Howard couldn't open the door. He tried to kick at it and bang on it with all his might, but it was of no use. "Haley, hold on. Don't worry, let me get Mom and Dad." Howard ran back to his house in a panic. He couldn't breathe when he got there. He panted as he told his mother that Haley was trapped in the abandoned house. His parents immediately went to her rescue, but even they couldn't open the door with their bare hands. Howard's father returned to the home and came back with a shovel. He gave a big bang on the lock and broke the door open. "Haley dear, we're here. You don't have to be scared." But when they went inside, Haley wasn't there. They searched the entire house, but Haley wasn't anywhere to be seen. Howard and his parents had searched the rest of that day, but it was of no use. His parents asked him the same question over and over again, but Howard didn't know what to say anymore. He himself couldn't understand what happened. Later that night, the police were informed. When the police came, they inspected the abandoned house in every nook and cranny. They even checked the attic and the basement, even though there was little chance that Haley could have gone there on her own. No one could understand how Haley could have gone missing. The house had been vacant for years before Howard and his family had bought their home and moved in next door. His parents had never seen anyone enter that house either. When a few years had gone by and Haley hadn't returned, and the police weren't able to find any other information, Haley's parents became hopeless and depressed. They didn't want to live in that home and be reminded of their lost daughter every time they peered next door. They had also noticed a change in Howard, which made them feel it was necessary to move away from the house for his sake. Howard was going through a tough time. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He kept asking his parents if the police had found any clue to what happened to Haley. "Mom, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened that day." "Howard, don't cry. We know it wasn't your fault. Sometimes things happen without any explanation. All we can do is hold our patience." When Howard's father had gotten a job offer the next summer from Pennsylvania, the family locked up the property in Nebraska and moved there. After they had moved, the family had slowly started a new life without Haley. They often remembered her, and the initial years were difficult. But as time went by, everyone accepted the loss. Howard closed the door to Haley's room. He went out to the backyard and walked around. The weeds were all overgrown, and it was difficult to walk through the shrubs. Howard looked at the abandoned house. It was still like how it was 16 years ago, broken down and rusted. The only reason Howard had come to Nebraska after so many years was to investigate the house for himself. He was the only person who had seen what happened inside with Haley. He needed to know how his sister could just vanish in a matter of minutes. It couldn't have taken him more than 5 minutes to bring his parents over. How could Haley disappear in 5 minutes? Howard blamed himself for not having been able to save his sister. He thought he could have grabbed his sister's hand and ran out with her. He thought he could have broken the door down when he could still hear Haley's voice when she was on the other side. Howard took rest in his old room for the night, and when morning came, he freshened up and headed out. When he entered the abandoned house, he smelt the same rotten wood and damp odor, except this time it was worse. Howard spent the whole morning searching the house. He checked every room. He even broke down a few walls. But Howard could find no clue. At around noon, Howard despairingly gave up his search and was planning to leave. But just when he was about to step out the door, something hit him on his head. It felt as if someone had thrown something from the top of the stairs from inside the house. He looked at a crumpled piece of paper on the ground. He picked it up and ran up the stairs. Was there someone there? Had someone entered the house the day Haley had gone missing? Howard barged into the room on the top floor. But when he opened the door, He saw it was empty, just how he had seen it earlier. He walked near the window and peered outside. There was no one around on the street. He looked down at the crumpled piece of paper. He opened it up and was shocked to see it was the same silly love letter a girl had given him 16 years ago when he went to school here. "Hey, look, Howard has a girlfriend. Did your girlfriend send you that?" "Give me that, Haley. You better not read it. I'm warning you." "All right, but what am I going to get in return?" "A knuckle sandwich if you don't give it to me right now." "Take it if you can." "Haley, stop. Don't go over there." "Breaking news, everyone. Howard's girlfriend wrote him a love letter. You're so going to pay for this." Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.